Hi, welcome to UnMute, an output series that opens up discussions on hard-hitting, often undiscussed topics in the music industry. I'm Danny Deal, editorial director at Output, and today we are going to be talking about finance in music. And to discuss this topic, we have with us Varien, Jeff Becker, Brett Blackman, and Autograf, who all come from various corners of the music industry. To kick things off, I would love if we could go around. I know I already said your name, but if you could just say it again, introduce yourself, and tell us a little bit about what you do in music. Varian, do you want to go first?
Absolutely. Hi, my name's Nikki. I make music under the name Varien, but I have an extensive history of working on the back end, everything from having K-pop #1s in the platinum hit to just recently having my first games for Nintendo Switch come out on doing the soundtracks for them. I've done consulting for big companies. I've done front-end releases under the name Varien through like Monster Cat. I've just been all over the freaking place. So I'm just here to provide a hopefully holistic view of finances because we're all on technology that costs money. How did we wind up here?
Absolutely. Jeff?
Sure. Hi, I'm Jeff Becker. I'm an attorney, primarily representing artists and businesses in the music space. I am the founder and chairman of the entertainment media practice group at a law firm called Swanson Martin Bell, and I am happy to help my clients not drive themselves off a cliff from a business perspective when they're working in the industry. So we work with artists from their infancy, starting out when they don't know what a copyright is, all the way to their first Grammy win, and then unfortunately to representing their estates when they pass away. I've worked on everything from the transactional side of things to litigation for some very large and very small artists, and I love the hell out of it. It lets me work closely and creatively with creative people, and makes the day go by a whole lot faster as a lawyer. So it's a little bit about me.
Thank you. Brett?
Hey, I'm Brett Blackman. I run the record label called Moving Castle. Kind of started as, just friends on SoundCloud that met one another. And, 7 years later, we've put out over 300 songs. We've done many, many tours, have sold a ton of different types of merchandise, and traveled the world doing it through that. And then I also run a management company, URL to IRL, and I manage singer-songwriters to producers to DJs to live artists. So I've been lucky from the producer side to work on like video games, doing custom music for like Netflix, like High Score with Power Glove, to Cyberpunk 2077 with them, to AO Beats working with like Paris Hilton and Rebecca Black and Slater, to other assorted artists, to Manila Killa working with, I've lost track of the amount of artists he's worked with, but has been lucky enough to tour the world, and I've also been lucky to go with him, which most recently we just did Hard Summer, which was also just a surreal feeling to be at an actual festival. And then I work with Gold Room, a legacy artist who is a DJ and a band, and as well as Slow Magic, who's also a legacy artist who's doing a 10-year tour that's coming up, and he's actually a masked artist. So it's been interesting to see how people react to that since I'm newer working with him. But yeah, those are the artists that I work with, and I work with the record label, and it's been really cool to see both sides of the label and the management side.
Awesome. And last but certainly not least, Autograf.
Hey, I'm Michael. I'm part of the group Autograf. We are a DJ producer group. We've had the pleasure of remixing a ton of artists early on, artists like Halsey, and just a ton of different artists that kind of got our start in that. And recently just released our first album, The Ace of You. So it's been really exciting doing our very first album. And I've got to tour the world, played festivals like Coachella, Lollapalooza, EDC. So I don't know, it's been a really crazy journey. And then outside of the Autograf project, I also run a multi-use studio in Los Angeles called Project Parallel. And I also on a couple different other projects like Soundful, which is an AI-based music app, and just recently started working with ZipMex, which is a blockchain company based in Singapore and Thailand.
Cool.
Wow, so all of you have tremendous amounts of free time is what I'm gathering.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm going to be asking questions to guide this conversation, but ultimately this is meant to be a safe space for you all to ask questions to the group that you might not be able to ask in the real world. To set the stage for this conversation about finance and music, I want to bring up a figure that I found in a study that was done by the Future of Music Coalition. And that is that the average working musician earns $35,300 annually from their music career. And that sounds low, and it is. And it also comes from a variety of sources. They say that shows only account for about a third of that income, while there's another stream of income from merch, another source of income from streaming. Essentially, there are tons of different buckets, but it still only adds up to about $35,000. Why do you think artists have such a hard time trying to monetize themselves?
Partly because I think it's something you're very passionate about. So it is a project of passion when you start out. So you're not really thinking about it in a monetary sense when you're first going at it. And you're probably often taking a lot of gigs and work that's not paying well just because of that passion about wanting just to get your art out there to people. I think that's something early on we did for probably the first 3 years. We probably lost money the first 3 years of Autograf because we were just doing remixes of artists that weren't unofficial and just stuff we wanted to do, for fun.
I would add to that from what Michael said. This business is, as Danny said, it's full of buckets, right? You don't go get a job and get a paycheck at the end of the week or 2 weeks and all your money is in one place. You have so many buckets of income, and those buckets are collectible from so many different sources. And artists are artistic. They use a certain side of their brain that allows them to focus on creating things in a much more talented way than I ever could. But when they're focusing on that, a lot of times they're not aware of all the crazy things you have to do and hoops you have to jump through to collect all your money. And that's difficult. That's really a difficult way for artists to operate, because if you're spending all your time trying to figure out where to go to get your money, you're not creating the content you need to generate more money, right? That's very hard.
You nailed it. And also, just in general, something that's going to be coming a lot with me is I've been really looking at how people on both the artist side and the consumer side how they value art, and specifically music. Like that is a whole other discussion, but maybe some key points can be folded in here, because you're right about the buckets, but sometimes those buckets don't weigh very much, maybe not as much as they should. If you think about the amount of work that's put into learning this craft, and then technically that's like sweat equity. And so it's weird to like become a master at something and then not like be able to make more than just basically the average salary for the American household, I suppose. Which I thought it was, Danny, I thought it was much lower than that. You and I had talked at one point. It was like 20-something thousand. I was like,
moving on up.
I mean, I suppose so. Let's get those sync licenses,
Varian, you're right. Even before I said what I was thinking about the technology side of it, right? And I think that when you look at entertainment, not just music, entertainment and technology, they're often butting heads. As technology progresses, entertainment industries kind of get screwed. They don't quite know how to approach new technology. The example I would often give it the Betamax. You know, this is not music, this is film, but as soon as there was a form of industry or technology that allowed you to record movies and things off of TV, the industry sued Sony to stop them from allowing that to happen. Obviously, we don't even have VCRs anymore. Now it's all DVRs and digital. And so, you know, it's Netflix started as a mail order thing for DVDs, and now you just sign up for 15 different subscription services to get all your TV shows and movies. And music, man, I was in college when Napster came about. I was downloading stuff left and right. South Park one day and every song I could think of the other day. And it took a while for the industry to figure out, let's not sue grandma and their college-aged grandchild. Let's monetize these streams $1 each. And that stopped repeating until interactive streaming cannibalized downloads. And so, you know, the buckets don't weigh a lot, you're right. But I also think there's some studies that are showing streaming is helping the recorded music industry come back. And in, you know, the next 5 to 10 years, hopefully it'll be at a point even higher. And the question really becomes, how do we use that creatively rather than just consistently telling Spotify to raise their subscription fees and stop offering free models? What else can be done creatively to open up more revenue streams within those models?
I look back at all that, and from the entertainment side, I don't know if you just saw, but the Scarlett Johansson thing with her movie and that her like suing Disney for what she was making at the box office versus it being streaming. Like, I don't know like the entire thing, but obviously it was dealing with, you know, getting a bonus for how many tickets sold in the theaters versus how it did streaming. But similarly to that, I'm sure, you know, music record labels felt threatened by, you know, streaming services where they're like, oh, we're not going to sell units. But now, because of how well streaming is doing, the major labels specifically are like, wow, they're making like tens of millions of dollars a day. So they're all obviously on board. Also, they have, you know, a stake in it. But I guess just kind of like piggybacking off of all that, similarly, and, you know, Michael from Autograf was just talking about like, you know, crypto or NFT things. Like, I remember as it was just getting bigger in the last few years, dealing with record labels and publishers, just like dealing with splits on like how to, and I'm sure Jeff, you're dealing with that as a lawyer, how do splits work and how do you, you know, quantify how much money is being made or split up when things are being like sold and then resold on the markets, and how can you always, you know, keep track of it? So as, you know, these different mediums kind of happen, I mean, it's just being attentive, I guess. And I guess for me as like, you know, a music manager too, as being also dealing with a record label, it's like you're figuring out like, okay, where is your revenue coming from? So like the label side, it's like just mostly the master, like really just the master having an agreement potentially, you know, with merchandise. But like generally speaking, like I don't touch publishing. So that's like, you know, you're not touching. Sorry if I'm like answering something that you were going to ask.
No, you're a great label. I like hearing that. That's fantastic.
But you're not collecting anything from like radio streams, but you're potentially getting money, you know, from because of radio that help regular streams, like from Spotify or sales or Apple, whatever, what have you. And then hopefully whatever you do translates to merch sales. And I'm sure Varien and Autograf, like you can see how that goes too. But it's hard, and you can attest to this, like without touring the last year plus, like it was incredibly difficult to like just manage living life and I didn't know that statistic, that 1/3 of your income is potentially touring. I feel like for some people it's like half or even more. Like that's what I thought. I'm just off. But I think at the end of the day, it's how you build your business and how you split touring versus music versus like sync versus merchandise versus making sure you're obviously registered for sound exchange, neighboring rights, ASCAP, BMI, what have you. But not to fully jump ahead to things, but that's my little thing around that.
No, you brought up an interesting phrase that I want to delve into more, which is treating yourself like a business. I think
you are.
That's talked about a lot, right? That artists should treat themselves like a business, but artists don't necessarily have a background in business, and I don't think a lot of people necessarily know what that means.
Yeah.
So what are the ways that presents itself for a musician?
So, Art, go on.
I just wanted to say real quick, when I read that question, and when I'm very interested in blockchain technology, and I've been working primarily, like my full-time job this year has been NFTs, and the only reason that I even have any it's been such a blessing, and I see the future in it. I'm very big on like Ethereum, but what ultimately I wanted to say was like there's a lot of this feeling within discourse in music that I just want to get out of the way, is that when you start looking at yourself as a business and you're an artist, that does not take away from the art. Like, just because you want to keep doing it and have investors, I know we're going to talk about all that fun stuff, but the fans need to know too that you're a business, and sometimes you got to make those money moves, and that doesn't take away from how important or how passionate you are about the art. And actually, there is an art to business that I find quite lovely, seeing it happen. But I just wanted to say, like, in whenever business and art is talked about side by side, it's always very like corpos versus like the underground cyberpunks. It's like no, it's just people who like want to do this for a living. So yeah, that's what I've noticed is people aren't so happy about me getting into like crypto the past year, and I've just been like, especially being like in the LGBT community, it's like you don't want to see like this win happen, but I think it's people not really understanding how musicians get paid and how little art is valued these days, except for unless you're a visual artist just hawking NFTs. So I think everyone else here can attest to the rest of what Danny's talking about, but I just wanted to say that, like, you can do both. You can both be a smart business owner and a passionate geek like me. So
yeah, I think it's interesting on social media. I've seen people post stuff like kind of hating on artists when they start to try to monetize their work, and it's like, don't you want us to be able to create more work for you to enjoy? And you're going to get upset about like stuff like ticket prices. It's like, well, in order for me to play that show and have that production, I have to have those ticket prices, and that's what's going to allow me to tour and create more. Like, I can't just do shows for free. And I don't know. I just think it's interesting that they value art in some aspects and music in some aspects, but at the same time, they think that it should be free for everybody. And it's like, well, I still have to pay myself, and I still have to live, I still have to eat, and it is a labor of passion, but at the same time, I want to do it full time. It's not like I want to like go work at a grocery store and then do music just for fun on the side. What I want to do. Yeah.
There's a misperception. Amongst the consuming public, right? Amongst the fans, that all artists are rich and all artists have lots of money. And there's certainly efforts made by different groups, Recording Academy and others, to humanize artists and explain that there are the struggling artists, there are the character actors, and the artists who are touring to make a living, right? And they're not all making millions of dollars a year. And that the money that goes from a venue into the artist's pocket doesn't all make its way to the artist's pocket. There are other people to feed and pay along the way, and that's seen both in bitching about ticket prices. It's seen in complaining about the cost of purchasing music. I think that I don't know that I would say that the music industry the recorded music industry was inflated before, but when you look at the cost of making a CD,
Oh my God, don't get me started.
you know, the cost of selling it,
The 90s.
right?
Yeah.
That was there was a lot of money, and most of
There's
that
a
went
lot of
into
money.
record pockets. Because let's be very clear about this.
Mhm.
If you were an independent artist, you were not pressing millions of CDs yourself at that time. You had to be signed to a major, and they were taking 85% of your income, and
Yeah.
maybe you got a decent advance, and it's mostly tied to a 360 deal. So even
Mhm.
you, the artist, weren't making a ton of money, even when signed to a major label. The equalizer is now becoming streaming, but the problem with streaming is, just like downloads, there is a threshold by which consumers will decide whether it's worth it to them to pay for things, right?
Mhm.
The free downloads, the Napsters and the BitTorrents that were used is where it started, and then it turned to this dollar downloads, which the consuming public decided, you know what, I can afford $1 for my favorite song. I'll do that, right? At what point would that download get too expensive that they just go find a Russian website to download it for free again?
Yeah.
And on streaming, you see the same thing. We're trying to find ways to turn free subscribers over to paying subscribers. They got to keep doing that, and finding ways to get family packages where my daughter's got a Spotify account because I pay for a family account, right?
Mhm.
My hope is that she'll understand that you got to do this, and you don't ever want to go back to the freemium model at any point. So she'll be tied in, even though she's 12. So there's that
Yeah.
I think we have to figure out. Yeah.
Well,
I think sorry.
sorry. Jeff, just while you had the microphone, going back to the idea of how does a musician treat themselves like a business?
Yeah.
What's some practical advice that you can give from a lawyer's perspective?
I think the first thing that we need to always say, and it's extremely cliche, but cliches exist for a reason because they generally make sense, is it's the music business. It's not the music fun. It's not the music fun zone or music hobby.
I've heard that.
You can have a hobby. You can have a hobby and go at it, but hobbies are things you do for fun, not to make money. And if you want to be an artist that makes money, you need to understand how that works. And as a lawyer, part of what I do is educate my clients. I educate them on how the business actually works. And for each of them, there's a different level of tolerance about how long they want to listen to me talk. And that's fine. But the general minimum threshold is you need to understand where the business and the revenues come from. And then the key to me on what a business looks like as an artist, because we could talk about forming companies, entities, and shit like that. But really, what I want anyone listening to this to take away from this is you're a business when you start forming a team around you. And that could be, your lawyer, your business manager, your personal manager, your agent. Those are kind of the core team members that I think of. And this is where artists get caught up. I'm not saying you need all of them at one time. They come at the naturally proper time for you and your business. But artists have this weird tendency to not want to bring people on sometimes because they got to pay them. They got to pay a lawyer by the hour sometimes, or 5%. They got to pay a manager 15 or 20% of their income. And why do I want to give that money away? And what I say is, look, you as an artist need to focus on, again, your art. You what makes you money, right? I use the example of the muffin man. If you're a muffin man and you want to make muffins, perfect the recipe, perfect the ingredients, come out with creative new muffins. Pay somebody else to clean the floor, to pay the rent, to mow the lawn, to distract you from making your money. When I talk about the team, these are the people that are there to help take away those distractions that help you build your business. And in any other business you go into, this office I'm in, we have to pay rent for that. I have assistants in the hallway that we have to pay a salary to, right? We're paying to keep the lights on. There's always overhead in any business you're in. In the music business, maybe you're not renting out a big office building, but you're probably paying somebody to run your day-to-day, and that's where the manager percentage might come in. So to me, that's what running a business is bringing the business people in that you trust, that can help you grow the pie. So even when you're giving them a piece of the pie, you're still taking home a hell of a lot more than you would have had they not been there. Every business is different, and some people don't need parts of the team, but that to me is a big part of it, is understanding how it works and treating yourself like a real business, which is going to have overhead.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I mean, what I would want to add to that is when you become a musician, I always tell people that you should learn a little bit of entertainment law, because you're going to be signing contracts, and at the beginning you might not have enough money to have a lawyer look at it. And just being keen about who you bring on and what the contracts say, what responsibilities do you owe to each other that is written down in this paper. Because Jeff, as much as you're absolutely right, there's also really shit managers out there who just do nothing, and they're happy to just play board of directors with you, but it takes a strong voice to stand up and say, get out. You're just here to mooch. So
Dude, I couldn't agree more.
That's from the artist perspective, and I went through that in recent times. So it's a little bit in me to be like, but managers, they got to really come through. Agents really got to come through, because they have to make it worth your time to not. I agree with you. Just focus on the music. But if I find out that there's some fuckery going on and you're not doing this, or you're not paying attention to that, but I am, it's like, why are you on my team? Get out.
Let me add a footnote to everything I said. Your team needs to be good and competent.
Yeah.
To deliver, no doubt. What I will say is this: there are organizations throughout the country that provide pro bono legal services, even when you can't afford them. And I will say that the places where I see people get screwed up the most are generally on those first early agreements, right? You sign up, and all of a sudden they come in my office and like, oh, I signed this management contract. Oh, it's a production deal. You're signed the next 5 records away to your manager, or you're tied in for a 6-year management deal. The manager who's done nothing for you. You know, and just to pitch here, Brett's not this manager. He's awesome. So, you know, go talk to Brett. But like a lot of people early on do not know that. And so, you know, in where I'm at, there's an organization called Lawyers for the Creative Arts. There's the artists out there in LA and New York and Nashville, where if you truly can't afford the services, they'll provide them to you at no cost. You know, you go through the process of applying for it, and you can get a lawyer. I myself volunteer for these types of things to help make sure you don't make that wrong first move. You don't want to build your business on a house of cards. So, Varien, I couldn't agree more. Let's all agree. Don't hire shitty people.
Right. It sucks. It sucks because there can be that narcissistic type that lures you in with the promises of the world, and then you find out through your lawyer that they've been embezzling thousands of dollars from you in royalties for years, and that just happened this year. I found out. So
sorry about that. That sounds
awful. but they were like a kick-ass manager, kick-ass, and it's like they were shitty. So, Brett, I'm implying anything at all, sweetheart. I will send you my pitch deck.
I know what I'm good at. Like, you know, I feel terrible hearing anything like that, and I've heard horror stories regarding that where like manager, other people, whatever. Like, it's unfortunate to hear, and I'm sorry.
Dude, it's not like it's on me, because it doesn't say in the contract I will embezzle you. But
well, that may be another lawyer question of how to offline of how to deal with that.
Doesn't this conversation though just emphasize the fact that it's the business? If it's a hobby, you don't give a shit who's stealing from you. You're just having fun, man.
Yeah, it's true,
man. But like, again, you got to have people around you that you trust and that are going to do a good job. And that goes back to knowing how to ask the right questions early on, knowing how to do research, knowing how to get referrals, knowing how to sign the first thing that comes in front of you. So, I mean, there's bad lawyers too, right? I mean, at the end of the day, there's bad everything. So you can't be scared to take the risk, the jump, but you should, when you're taking that first step, you know, learn how to ask the right questions so your business is being built the right way.
Absolutely.
What does that tangibly look like, though? How does someone know what to look up, what they should be reading, what information they should be consuming if they're just starting out? This is a struggle that I am always faced with. It's always, well, the information is out there, you should just Google it. But if you're starting out and you don't know what the heck you're supposed to Google, what do you do?
Listen to things like this.
Yeah, like honestly.
It's true. I got to write my own book at some point because Don Passman was making a lot of money off of me. But Don Passman writes a book called All You Need to Know About the Music Business. I use it in my law school class I teach. I tell every artist to look at it. It's an easier read, and it gives you some basic information about what different team members do, how labels work. The newest edition gets into digital stuff. But like, that's a good book as a starting point. I think that if you know, I know very few people that have called me and asked me for 5 minutes to pick my brain on something and give them some direction that I said no to. So learning about who's out there that you might be able to at least talk to for a few minutes to give you some guidance is a smart idea too, right? When you do talk to people for your team, ask them who they work with. I hate that question because I don't want to feel like, well, you got to pop all these big names out there, but if they can't say that they work with anybody, like maybe what other artists like me do you work with? So you're not trying to make them impress you, but so that they actually have done this before, and maybe ask if they have anybody that they're okay with you having, referrals and speak with and get references from. Honestly, the warm introductions generally go a lot further because now people are putting their own credibility and relationships on the line, and that means something. When I refer somebody to someone I work with, I'm not going to do it if I'm worried they're going to shit the bed. And so finding those relationships, it takes time. Go out, network, talk to other artists. This is a community. You're not by yourself, right? The strongest artists in my experience are the ones that are friends with their other artists that are in their contemporaries rather than competitors. It's stupid.
No, there's a weird competition thing happening actually since NFTs have really been blowing up. I've met quite a few artists who are like, finally, it's our time, like visual artists. Like, finally, it's our time. And I'm, making $30,000 a month. And it's like, do you think every musician is a millionaire? Like, is that why you feel like you need to give me 15%? Is because some musician underpaid you on Instagram one time and you shove it in our face like, finally, we're getting paid. But honestly, from an artist perspective and Autograf, I don't know if I'm just emotional or maybe you can back me up on this, but when you first start off, you're almost like shy to ask those questions. Like, who do you ask? Why do you ask? What do you ask? And I think that's actually a really good question to ask. Is it's sort of meta, but you ask, what do I ask? So that you can get the answers that you need. And for me, being 10 years into this with Varien coming this November, I'm still, vetting everyone that I try to work with. And it's like, when I say, what can I expect? It's like, well, first of all, my expectations aren't high to begin with. That's a very important part. But the second thing is there are certain things that people can't promise you from the get-go. They can't promise you they're going to get you a sync license every month and that you're going to buy a Tesla with that new awesome, RC Advance. It's like, it's just I'm still vetting people because I need to know that at the very least you'll promise me to try and that you'll show me what you're doing, that there'll be clear communication. Like, I'm very, very open about that. So when I see things are done behind the thing, I don't know, at this point in my career, I like to know when things are going on. So at least promise me that you'll keep me up to date on things. Promise me that you'll treat me with respect, and I won't have to worry about some homophobic, transphobic shit like in the future. Promise me that, just like at the very least X, Y, and Z. There are some things you can promise an artist that makes them feel safer to ask further questions. And so I'm tired of hearing like no promises, but I'm like, yeah, you can tell me. So you can tell me what's up. I'm just
I think your point about when you're an artist, like you don't want to ask questions because you feel like you're going to come off uninformed in the beginning. And I definitely felt that because I was never my intention to like become a DJ and all this stuff. It just kind of happened for me as a hobby that became like something that became a business. But early on, it was kind of very intimidating when I would meet other people who do this full time, and they're like kind of almost like you don't want to come off as like the new person that doesn't know these things. And early on, I just didn't know like what anything was. Like I didn't know who to ask these questions, and really we kind of had to seek out these people and finally did find people that weren't afraid to answer my stupid questions early on, and were very willing to like answer these questions for me. It made me feel more comfortable just to keep asking questions early on. And now when I don't know something, I'm the first to admit I don't know it, and I'm so happy to go out and ask somebody that question. Whereas I feel like early on in my career, I was so scared when I needed that advice the most.
Yeah.
I think that's true amongst almost anybody in the industry. I know that when I started out, I didn't want to ask people things initially. I had to find people I could trust to ask the questions I didn't know. Brett, as a manager, you want to come off as the guy that knows things too. I mean, the reality is everyone starts somewhere and doesn't know things until they know them, right?
Yeah.
Just finding the people that you can unequivocally trust to not make you feel bad about not knowing, so that you can educate yourself. And at a certain point, you have to be comfortable not knowing things. This NFT thing that Varian's talking about, I didn't know shit about NFTs until the first time I heard the word NFT, which was during COVID. And now, same thing, I've got a dozen NFT projects going on, and I had to call and ask people that I trusted, hey, walk me through what this stuff is, walk me through how it works. And over time you learn until you find out there's something new you didn't know. But that's the reality for all of us.
I think it's just being okay to ask questions. Like my background is business and communications. That's what I went to school for, but it wasn't music business. So when I started music, being a manager, I did not know what a PRO was. I did not know what sound exchange was. I didn't even know how to get music onto like ingested into like Spotify, Apple, iTunes, etc. It literally took multiple years. Like I did not know it right away. Like I was learning on the go, and years later, there's something else to learn. There's something new to learn every day, and it's being okay with being like, hey, do you mind giving me 5 minutes of your time or whatever, to like go over something? And, over time, all of us have been doing what we've been doing for a while. And it's like, if you don't know, like that person that may know, you may know someone that knows whatever person that could put you in touch. That's like, they're the person that knows all of this stuff. And it's, you feel comfortable talking to them. And they usually, just hearing what you said, Jeff, like most people will give with, an open, warm hand, heart, whatnot. Like if I'm ever asked about anything, I generally will give someone time to answer anything. But yeah, it's totally cool. Like to not know, like it's still a learning process to understand even how to like register your music in like, an ASCAP BMI or something else, and like how often that money comes in. Same with like sound exchange, making sure, you put your music, your sets that you DJ or do a live set into your PRO to make sure you're collecting on that, or other people are collecting on that. You're sorry, the dog. But, I mean, I think as you kind of continue to do whatever you're doing, I think it's feeling okay that you don't have all the answers. As I've gotten older, I know I don't have all the answers, and I'd be scared if I did, because I won't. But yeah, like hopefully I'm more knowledgeable. And I could talk all day about like, a marketing plan or certain things, but like what you guys do, I have not the slightest idea how to do what you do. It's going back to the Muffin Man thing.
I'm glad the Muffin Man is getting traction.
Yeah.
Yes.
So for people that are just starting out, one of the things that I usually hear from folks is they want to be a musician. They know they want to do it full time. And so in their head, they think they automatically need that team around them. They need the agent, they need a manager, they need all of these other puzzle pieces in order to make the thing work.
Yeah.
When in someone's career do you need to add in those pieces, and how much should an artist realistically spend?
Yeah, so I saw, if any of you guys follow like Little Texas on Twitter, one of his tweets the other day was like, literally, don't like, you should have a day job. You can't, like, sometimes you cannot just go full time into music, but eventually, you know, you will figure out when you can maybe make that transition, even if it's gradually, and do something, you know, more part-time. And it's like just hearing from you, Varien and Autograf, like, you have your music project, but you have all this other stuff, you know? And it's like, I'm a music manager and I do a record label, but like I do like other like things with the amount of clients I have. But to fully answer your question, it happens almost organically, where you do not know if either a manager seeks you because you're either friendly with them on social media or you've met them and you would potentially like fit in their team, or vice versa. The other, you know, for me recently in the last year, specifically in COVID, what have you, like I had Gold Room as well as Slow Magic approach me, and they were like, hey, first Gold Room is like, hey, Hotel Garuda that you work with, he's going on tour with RAC. I'm friendly with RAC, as you know, and I have a record label, Minerva, with him. I've heard good things. We've known each other for a while. I would love to open up a conversation for us to work together. And I've been a fan of him for years. So similarly, like the conversation started, and, you know, I worked with him for 3 months or 4 months before one, I even took a dime, but just showing trust of like what I could do. It's not even just jumping into, sorry, dog, but not jumping into like something, you know? And similarly with, you know, my other artist, Slow Magic, that I more recently was working with, I signed his EP to Moving Castle, been friends and fans with him for a while. And then him and his manager split, and he was like, hey, like, what do you think about working with me? And I was like, to both of them, I'm like, what's your 2 to 5 year plan? Like, straight up, like, what are you working on now? Like, what is your business? What's your previous tour revenue? Like, what are your goals? Like, what festivals do you want to play? What shows do you do? Like, I looked over the numbers too, and like, I have to think of that for myself. So there's a difference between knowing working with like an artist that's been around for longer versus developing, because to be honest, there's some artists that, as you said, Mike, like you don't make anything for your first few years when you're starting. Like you literally, the same exact time when Garuda and Manila were coming up, we were just doing a ton of bootlegs and free remixes and shows that like we barely made any money. I did not get into music management as like an actual job I could live off of until like 4 years ago, but I've been working in music for like 8 years, give or take. And I had another job, you know? So it's like, you know, when you can kind of step away from the other thing. My short, long answer on that.
I think the whole point of like finding, like you're finding artists that you vibe with and you knew and became friends with. It's like same for us, like our managers that we have now. Like I've known them way before they were our managers. Like I knew them as friends almost first, that I knew what they were doing. And when we first started working together, they weren't even full-time managers. Our manager Benito, he was working at Omnia in Vegas and doing marketing for them and stuff. And he just was like, we were friends, we knew each other, and he was like, hey, I really like what you guys are doing. I'd love to like kind of like help you guys with some of the stuff you're doing. And we kind of started working together. And then, you know, as time went on, he grew his management company, and then finally we did end up signing with them to like as our full-time managers. But it was something where I felt like I could trust them because I did know them for years prior to that, and it wasn't like a cold calling like manager. And I think often like the idea is like an artist, like you just want this manager that's going to do all this stuff for you. Like that's not going to be the case. It's like you are going to work together to create what you have as like this end product. And any manager who's going to come to you and just promise you the world is lying to you, I think, because that's not the case. It is a team effort thing. You're working as a team to create something.
And just to go off that super briefly, like building a relationship and trust and like knowing who said person and what their values are and what it is like being around them, like it's just like a very important thing.
And I think also back to the point about like you were talking about like the little Texas tweet and stuff, having another job. Often I think trying to find jobs within the music industry is a good way to like kind of launch your career off. Like prior to Autograf, I was music programming for a hotel. I had like an art background too, but I was working with Burger King and Burden Snowboards and a couple other companies doing stuff. And it was all kind of tied to this creative industry. And I think by doing all that stuff, it allowed me to like get my foot in the door, having a salary-based job that then, was kind of being able to like sustain myself during those times. But at the same time, I was in a creative field where I was meeting people and making those connections and being able to work on my craft as an artist. And then even for us, like we started throwing shows in Chicago, and that was like a big start for us. My prior project, just throwing shows in Chicago and like getting to know all the other promoters and booking other DJs and getting to know them. And then through that, like meeting their managers and meeting their agents. And with that, like we ended up meeting like Patrick Moxie from Ultra, and he signed our first album as a result of that. And it just kind of like snowballs, I think, by doing things within the industry that might not necessarily be like your project to start.
Oh my God, yeah.
Can I dovetail off that and try to answer your question, Danny, as concisely as I can, because I know you're probably going to want to ask another question.
Let's see.
When is the right time to bring on a team? It depends on who the team member is, what their service is, and it really needs to be when there's a real reason to do so that's going to support and help you in an organic way. You shouldn't bring someone on just to have them, because that's when they could be taking advantage of you or receiving your revenue when they aren't earning a worthy of it. Booking agents are generally not going to come on immediately out of the gate. It happens sometimes, but you got to put in some of your own sweat equity first to start getting out there and playing live and create some traction before they're going to come on and take a percentage of your live shows. Because if it takes them longer to book you for $200 than it takes one of their stable artists to book for $50,000, it's a lot of work they're putting down. They're not ready for it. Managers, that's the trickiest one, because there are so many different kinds that provide so many different services, some good, some bad. But you have to look at a manager as if they're going to add value to you, and you have to ask them how they're going to do that and move you to the next level. And that's true for lawyers and business managers and agents. They come on at different times. As far as the question of how much is this going to cost you, I think, and I don't want to scare people by putting the number out there, about 40% of your income, if all those people are coming on over the course of time. Because lawyers, if you're doing it not on an hourly basis, if they're willing to take you on percentage, are probably around 5%. Business managers are around 5%. Managers are 15 to 20%, and your booking agent is going to be 10%. Agents are only going to take 10% of what they do for you, and not everything, but the other 3 are taking a percentage of everything you do. So at a live show, while you're paying an agent, it adds up to about 35, 40%. If they're all doing their jobs for you, they're going to make you a heck of a lot more money. And they're going to take things off of your shoulders so you don't have to do those things anymore, thereby allowing you to make more money. So you have to know it's time. And if you're only looking for somebody like a manager or an agent so you can say you have one, it might not be time.
Right. I think I'm the black sheep here because I've only had 2 managers in a span of 10 years. And has it been chaotic? Yeah, sure. Have I done pretty much everything myself? Yeah, sure. But, everyone has a different sort of path through music. And, I think it's the most important thing that I could ever tell someone who would say, can I have advice about like a team and whatnot? And it's like, well, first of all, like the transition to full-time musician, you got to build out those revenue streams. Like right now, without anyone like taking a percentage from it, I have over 20 individual revenue streams that I've built since 2011, ranging from Korea K-pop to like just equity and like ideas and stuff that have been in the making for a while, to just various stuff. And I just try to make sure that every, royalty quarter, if some are going to be better than others, but that's going to happen regardless if like you have a manager or not. So I'm kind of like the black sheep because I think like at 31 I've become a little bit tired. So I'm like just now kind of like flirting with the idea of managers, but I've been around enough and I've written for enough artists to know you've really got to wow me, because I picked up some dudes like some time back and they talked the talk, they got paid up by me and what I was doing, but in the end got nothing done for me. So I would just say to people starting out, stick to yourself, stick to your guns, what you want to do, but also find out different places, like what Autograf was talking about. Like there's so many different ways that you can do music. Start getting involved with like selling your stuff like on an Envato, and just it's just this like thing that happens. But don't rush to get a manager. A manager won't promise you stuff. You can count on yourself, but a manager really you have to watch them do their thing to be really convinced.
That's really interesting that you say you have about 20 different avenues of
more
income.
than I just don't know the number anymore. I don't know the number anymore.
I think a lot of people look at music and they see only a couple of very primary channels where revenue can be generated. They see shows, they see merch, they see streams. And obviously the way that we have diversified making money in the music industry has changed a lot over the past 5 years. And I would assume has changed even more significantly for several people over the past year with COVID. So what are some of the ways that you've diversified your income as a musician? And what are some low lift ways that other musicians could diversify their incomes?
So here's the thing is that when you think about opening up a revenue stream, you're not always talking about creating a song A to B and then like, shipping it off. That's just releasing. I'm not even touring. I haven't toured since like 2015. I would eventually like to perform again, but I've been very much like on the back end. So what does that mean? It means that, like working on just making the right connections and the right emails with people who do like sound libraries who then, can all of a sudden you see on your BMI statement that you were played, during this football game for this amount of time and it equaled this many dollars. And then you just do that 1,000 times. It's not
people that don't know what a sound library is. Could you explain?
Absolutely. It's like, it's just like, it's basically a sound pack, but it's more meant for like for composers for media. So that's where like I got my real big first start. And then once I kept that alive, then I was doing like the angry, like this is when I was starting off, and I just did a big tweet about this today because it's amazing that touring acts who are like at the top of like bills are DMing me about how I'm getting game gigs. And it's like, all right, I've been working on this for a long time, and I've for every one big success, there's like 1,000 failures, like you don't see how much money is lost and how much money is gained. So, sound libraries are just one of many things. There's packs that you can do for Splice eventually, or if you're good enough, you can hit up one of the companies that gets packs on Splice, and you can maybe like just insert yourself into conversations with people. If you want to work on a game, find a Kickstarter that doesn't have the biggest budget and just got started, like, getting funded, and insert yourself into their DMs on Kickstarter and say, do you need sound? and then learn sound effects, sound design, composing, producing, mixing, mastering. Like all these little things add up and they create a schedule for you. And before you know it, then you're working full time. But in order to do the 20 plus revenue stream, you're gonna have to give it like a decade, like I have, because I'm insane. I'm insane. I tend to overwhelm manager types. So because they're like, where's this money coming from? Like, oh, easy. I did a couple J-pop stuff back in 2017. No problem. Just that. That's my advice. Is just start somewhere and just keep looking at everything and like, I'm gonna learn that. I'm gonna learn that. I'm gonna learn that. I'm gonna learn that. And it's like, how bad do you want this? And I suppose that's just coming from me as like a very non-traditional person who's still making a living in music and has for the past decade without really manager help or any touring really.
I think we temporarily lost Michael. Are you there?
No.
Internet.
I'm going to turn that image into an NFT.
That would be a bootleg, dude.
Yes, it would.
That would be a bootleg. There's no smart contract attached to it.
I'm gonna mint that thing. It's gonna be great.
I think one thing,
yes, please, someone else.
Going back to, the 20 streams of income, like it's definitely fascinating, and to know, like, for doing X games or X productions for songs. It eventually really adds up on top of the normal streams. And then I heard you just say something about like just wanting it really badly. And my general advice of any of this is you need to want it. Whatever it is, being a musician or a lawyer for your clients, or me being a manager for my artists as a label or manager, like you want to win, you want to see people succeed, you want to lift people up, you want to connect people, you want to do those things. And yesterday I talked to Icon Collective, and they asked me my advice to them as a student who was potentially looking for a manager and when that time would come. And I'm like, you need to want it really badly and want it more than whoever you work with. And even when you do work with someone, like, you just have to be hungry,
Oh yeah.
But not thirsty.
No, can't be thirsty.
Out there too.
You gotta be.
I said this yesterday as a joke of like, you have to be hungry, not thirsty. As that was what I closed my thing yesterday.
Does he know that we tapped his phone? Is he aware of this?
Do you say that all the time? I don't know.
I've started to, because there's definitely a difference, right? There's definitely, we talked about earlier of how you get to meet people and figure out the team, and you got to be out there and talking to people. I think, Brett, you were saying it really well earlier. You have to be out there in a way that you're willing to be a good person and get to know people and be like genuinely interested in them. Those are the people, in my opinion, that are successful. They're not looking at how you can help me. Like, I'm not out there like, are you gonna be my client? Are you gonna be my client? What kind of money can I make off of you? I don't give a shit. Like, at the end of the day, I just think this is an industry full of interesting people, and you have to be genuinely interested in people and their personalities and what they're doing. And what I find is when you are, it comes across to the other people, and they end up wanting to work with you. You know that you care about them, and that ends up resulting in more referrals and more good relationships than you'd otherwise have. And so, being willing to give those few minutes of time to somebody else to help them out will ultimately help you down the line, in that way. Danny, do you want to talk more about money or anything?
Literally, yeah. The whole point of this, I think, is just to have people be realistic about the dollars that they're going to spend as a musician versus what they can expect to make as a musician.
Yeah.
And it's a weird tightrope to walk where, you know, if you're not making a lot of money as a musician, where most musicians are not, how do you decide where you spend money when every dollar counts? How do you decide that a $2,000 investment is worth it, or if you should save that $2,000? So, you know, that's really what I was hoping to clarify here is, you know, where should people really put the focus when it comes to their money when they're starting out?
Gosh.
Really, really good question. I think, you know, unfortunately, I've been groomed as a lawyer to say, you know, as my default answer, it depends, right? It always depends. There's never a black and white answer to this. I think that a couple of guideposts are, as you're starting out, the best place to put your money is into creating the actual music, to get the tangible asset. And this is where it depends again, be careful. You got to find the right producers to work with, the right people to work with. They're going to help you create great product, but you need to have a product to pitch as a starting point. Before you start spending $10,000 on PR, how much have you put into creating your actual music and finding people to help do that? Then, yeah, once you've got a great product, you know, you want to spend some money on getting it out into the world and getting it through the noise. Brett, I love your dog. Don't worry about it. It's fantastic. It adds to the character of this whole thing.
Love animals. Don't worry about it.
You got to be able to get through the noise because there's so much music now available. How do you break through the noise? And that's the next part of it. Outside of that, it's really spending money places that are going to help you make money, right? It's that kind of stuff that's going to feed back into making you money. If you're going to spend $30,000 going on tour and spending all this money paying for airplanes, airplanes and trucks and everything else, and hotel rooms to play in front of 4 people, maybe getting that big international tour that's not going to get anybody there yet isn't the right place to spend it. So it depends on where you are and what's right for you at that stage.
So for me, it's doing like the past 10 years, just like, again, funding a lot of stuff myself. 3 most important letters, ROI. What is my return on investment? Because if I invest $2,000 in a photo shoot that is going to be top tier and I know are going to be the most banging press shots for the next 6 months, and I know that I've got good music to pair it with, I've got to pay for some art, but I know that over time through, again, there's like leaps of faith that you have to take here with your money. You can be informed about exactly what you're doing, but the industry is not sort of like this. It is not a meritocracy. So there are people who spent $0 and are going to perform better than you, and you have to get used to that now. But overall, for me, like where I'm at now, just in life, what's most important to me in terms of what do I spend money on? Well, first of all, I make sure there's enough liquid to pay the rent and pay the bills and pay the weird stuff, like car stuff, as we talked about earlier. But then there's some wiggle room where it's like, you know what, Danny, I gotta buy some new monitors. You know, like I've had these for 7 years and they're still kicking a little bit, but I can hear them hissing a lot more. And so it really is about, you know, and looking about the return part, the return on your investment, not just monetarily, but, you know, if they're going to provide me a better sound, which is going to bump up the quality of my mixes by 5%, who knows where that single thing will take me. And it sounds like I'm cherry picking one thing, but it really is just a matter of like, what do you consider an investment and what do you consider a return on that? So, because there's also investments of time. And that to me is worth money. So when people hire me, they don't just hire me for my services as like an audio director, they actually hire me for my time. And so time that I could be better spent doing something else, paying more, paying less, who knows? but it's like art. It depends because, you know, we have a manager, we have a lawyer, and then we have an artist here. And it's like the financial priorities are kind of, it depends. I like Jeff's answer. It depends on your situation. So
Yeah. What I tell any, you know, artists just starting out is invest in your branding, like photography, graphic design, videos, like lyric videos, music videos. You do not need a $10,000+ video. Like, you do not need that. Like, you can literally get a camcorder and come up with something.
yeah.
I think to start out, like, it's definitely branding, but then, you know, it builds into, will your branding get you, you know, help with touring, like getting you booked for things? Like, do you have a cool press photo to give this, whatever? Like, will you get an agent? You know, will, as you were just saying, like getting, you know, better monitors for mixing, what have you? Will that help me do XYZ to get like that extra production deal or remix or sync or whatever? So I think there's just levels. There's just many levels to it.
The perspectives.
Yeah, perspectives.
Totally.
Yeah.
And as we I'm so sad that Michael's having internet connections.
I'm sad too.
Because we
I
are
really
going to
want
wrap this up in a minute.
Okay.
But what resources would you recommend for artists that want to start treating their finances differently? And when I say resources, I mean everything from what books they can start reading, what websites should they start checking on a weekly basis, but also maybe what software should they try to learn? And if it's as easy as saying learn Excel, then it's learn Excel.
Straight up, it's dumb as it sounds, have an Excel sheet that shows all of your sources of income. And obviously you can have like QuickBooks or whatnot, but it's like, you just need to know when you're being paid a month, quarterly, semi-annually, annually, what have you. And that allows you to know what your cash flow is and when. Like, it's as easy as that. That's the first thing, like, really, just for financially, like, that's really the easiest you can get.
I'm gonna second on QuickBooks real quick. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, please, Jeff. I'm really interested.
I think that there's a few places. I mentioned the Passman book. I would mention that the Brabeck twins have a book called Music, Money, and Success. It's a little bit more dense. It's very good. It tells you a lot about revenue streams, especially on publishing side of things. I would go and Google the Mechanical Licensing Collective and go to their website and learn what the heck they are if you don't already know. And Sound Exchange, and go to their website and learn what they do. These are two organizations, I think, that are a little bit different than anything that most artists understand, like what TuneCore is and CD Baby, but the publishing side of things and neighboring rights are foreign to a lot of people. I guarantee you, when we're talking about money, most artists are leaving money on the table right now, and you got to stop bitching about how little you're getting paid through Spotify if you're not collecting 100% of the money you should be through that platform. So those are places I would go. I would also look for presentations and panels, like the one we're doing right now, like through Lawyers for the Creative Arts or Volunteer Lawyers for the Arts. There's a lot of reading these organizations put out that are not intended to pitch for business, but are intended to educate artists, especially starting out artists. So those are some ideas I think that could help really build a good foundation for you out of the gate.
I feel like we could do entirely separate panels specifically on metadata in music and copyright.
I was just, Danny, you and I were on that. We were on that, and just, don't become part of that. It's just such a nightmare.
Michael, I'm so glad to see you.
I'm back.
On screen.
My internet completely went out or something.
Oh, good. Everybody was just sharing some resources for artists that want to start treating their finances a little bit more seriously. or tools that you should use? Like personally, what do you do to keep track of your finances?
Oh man. So, well, one of the things, honestly, like when we first started this was going to the SBA actually, when we formed our LLC, and they actually provide, there's like a lot of free resources through them, and you can like sit down with like retired business owners. So we first started like just having the chance to like talk to some of those people and get guidance from them was like a big help when like just trying to organize and structure Autograf as an LLC. And there's a lot of free resources I think out there like that you can just tap into, people that are looking to give back, people who are often like retired and just like want to spend one day a week keeping their minds fresh, and they give back to like, you know, small businesses or artists and the community. So just looking for those kind of resources I think was like really helpful for us early on.
Nice. And as a cap to this whole conversation, if an artist is looking to make more money right now, I know this feels for some people maybe like throwing a dart at a wall, but what's the easiest number one thing that someone can change or do as a musician to start making more money?
I'll give an abstract answer, and then I'll have the lawyer and the manager give the honestly, like my whole career, it has like, and even now I'm just an anthropologist. I just watch, I listen, I hear conversations, I try to keep up with what a lot of people are interested in and talking about. And a lot of that is music, especially with this whole new gold rush of like, what the hell is an NFT and how do we make that much money off of it? Holy crap. You know, like it's this sort of keeping up just with your own craft is kind of part of the craft. So I definitely like to watch people and learn from their successes and their failures. Now, I can't point to any specific thing. I can, you know, name off some things, but I absolutely bet that Jeff and Michael and Brett have something much more concrete to give. But I just be open, be open.
I think so much comes down to like your strengths as an artist too, because like all artists have different strengths. If you're like an amazing producer and you can go produce for like other people, that's a great revenue source, I think. If you are really on the technology side, like work in like the technology of music. If you're like, if you can DJ anything, you can go get like open format DJ gigs while you build your brand. So I think this really depends on your strength as an artist, what you're looking to do. You know, there's so many different routes to take as an artist. So it kind of comes down to what that is for you.
Yeah, I fully agree. Like whatever your strength is, like if you're strictly a producer, like being able to produce either for other artists or doing like sound design stuff, or, you know, working for like those companies that like you're making music for TV shows or movies or whatnot, to, you know, if you're an artist and like you're able to start to get like, you know, certain official remixes, and you maybe are able to get, you know, $500 to $5,000 or more doing that, or you're really creative and you like to do merchandise and you've like a fan base that's starting to bud, and you know the whole adage of if you have 1,000 true fans, you're successful or whatnot for life. It's a little different now, but maybe similarly it goes the correct way of just being like, okay, how, like if you're making merchandise and you're selling or your vinyl or CDs or whatever, and you can physically get that versus like, you know how many streams you need to, you know, or purchases. But yeah, I mean, again, as you're saying, like it just highly depends on who you are as a person or an artist and what your strengths are. And taking just like incremental steps and focusing on like one or two things at a time. And looking back for us, I think when I was managing in the beginning, I think remixes and shows were the two most prolific and financially lucrative things that actually helped people like my artists get by in the beginning, which then led to like finding an agent and other stuff.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think that Varian set us up for the more concrete answers. I like that, Varian. Good job. I wanted to be abstract and vague. Darn it. Everything I've heard just now is definitely looking for other things you can do that make money, right?
Yeah.
Go produce, go do this. I think what I'd add to that is this, and I don't think anyone should listen to this and take this part of the segment to be, oh, it's gonna make you lots more money. Like, we're gonna make thousands of dollars tomorrow by doing all of these things. I think that more money is relative to what you're already making, right? If you're an artist making $1,000 a year, getting $2,000 a year is literally doubling what you're making. If you're making $1 million, making $15,000 more is a little bit more, but not as much as it would be if you're smaller, right? So it all depends where you are. But I think the one truth in this is figuring out ways to increase and engage with your fan base. I think that is a way that you will absolutely increase your revenue, right? If you've got 1,000 monthly listeners on Spotify and you can increase that to 2,000, now you've got a lot more streaming, and it's not huge money because it's streaming, but it will make you more. If you can find a way with your social media to be creative and come out with something, whether it's a meet and greet, maybe something you hold off on during COVID, or a limited edition physical product that you could put together, something you can send out to certain fans, maybe bring some more fans into your world and get some of those fans to buy something new from you. That's a way to increase your revenue. And close that out with Brett's point. Once you hit that level where you've got the number of fans that are true fans that will follow you around and go to your shows and buy your limited drops and whatever it is, you can make revenue from them for a very long time. They're engaged with you. They're committed to you. So I would say spending some time right now to increase that fan base and engage with them would be very essential.
I love that. And let me just tack on one more thing, Danny. I know we're almost out of time, but it's been fun producing and then having kids grow up with my music and then being in positions to hire me. Like, hey, I grew up listening to your music, and now that I am able to secure funding for a video game, I've always wanted to work with you. And I'm at that point in the past year in my life. So it's been, be really, really just gain that fan base, gain the people who like to see what you do.
Yeah.
That's a great note to add on.
And like one last thing too, like similarly with some of my artists too, we're getting, emails at times. They're like, hey, we're having a birthday or a wedding, like we've been a fan for X years, like that. Similarly with the video game stuff, they're like, we've been a fan for X time, and like you just grow together.
It is cool.
Yeah, they're the ones buying every award show. There's an actor or a musician. They got to thank their fans, right? Without them, no one's buying or streaming or getting their music, and so they're the real boss ultimately. But they're gonna find it out.
It's true.
That I can't think of a better way to end a conversation about finance and music than to say that fans are ultimately the bosses of us. And Brett, do we get to see the animal that's been making all of this noise?
He's literally just been annoying me to the side, so yeah, sure. Say bye. So loud, man.
My cat is asleep and planning, the suffering of everyone.
I was going to ask you if that was a cat sitting on the corner of the bed there. That was an actual cat?
Where?
Behind you, like by the bed, right? No?
This is no, but there is a cat. Hold on.
When the screen expanded, I saw a cat.
I'm having my wife hand me the cat.
I love it.
It's actually a large man.
Oh, no.
Oh, wow.
Oh, it's a very large man. Yeah.
Beautiful. Wow. That's a big boy. Hi.
Hi, everyone. I just want to say, is this thing on? I just want to say that my mommy provides
no
a lot of
animals.
food for me.
I've got a Art Atkins doll. Does that count? Oh, well.
This is the best ending, I think.
There's
we've ever had to
a
one
dog
year.
and a cat in my room right now. They're like staring each other down.
Well, thanks for having us.
Thank
Yeah,
you for having
thank
me.
you.
We were a
Thank
little.
you, everyone.
Thank you, Danny.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us. This was great. I wish that we had more time. I'm sure that this could go on all afternoon. But thank you for at least spending a good chunk of your afternoon to talk about this with us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Danny.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you,
us.
everyone.
Thanks, everybody else.